here. My name is Joan Zahra Dark. I am your host for this round of Nibbit Inkfest events today. I'm so excited to be welcoming you all to the Creating Comics for IP panel that we have running. Thanks so much, y'all. Uh, I want to quickly introduce our panelists that we have running. If anyone is just joining, we have captions available if you are watching via Zoom that you can click on the bottom window and check those out there. You can also request the transcript or captions after the fact, regardless of what viewing platform you are on, whether it's on Zoom or on the stream via YouTube. I'm also going to hit the recording before I forget.
Recording in progress.
We didn't get too far in there in case you're watching this after the fact. I'm so excited to welcome our panelists here. Zoe Tunnell is a trans lesbian writer based in New Jersey. She has written both licensed works like Godzilla and Marvel, as well as original works like the Dark Horse published webcomic Blade Maidens. Zoe, thank you so much for being here.
Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be moderating.
Yeah. Jadzia Axelrod is the author of Galaxy, the Prettiest Star, and Hot Girl, Once Upon a Galaxy for DC Comics, the DC Book of Pride, as well as comics for Tor, Quirk Books, and Epic Books. She lives in Philadelphia where she cooks needlessly elaborate meals for her wonderful wife and delightful child. Jadzia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Preeti Chhibber is an author, speaker, and freelancer. She's written for Sci-Fi, Polygon, and Elle, among others, across prose, comics, and podcasts. She's written for characters like Spider-Man, the X-Men, and the Riddler. Her debut YA, Payal Mehta's romance revenge plot, released in 2024. She's paneled at New York Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and appeared on screen at Sci-Fi. She usually spends her time reading a ridiculous amount of YA, but is ready to jump into most fandoms at a moment's notice. Preeti, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am super excited about this.
Wonderful. Steve Lieber's work has been published by DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Image, Oni, Duplice, and many others. He's best known as the artist of the DC comic series Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen and the graphic novel Whiteout, both of which won Eisner Awards. Steve is a founding member of Helioscope, the largest studio of freelance comics and storyboard artists in North America. Steve, so glad to have you here.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And last but not least, UIC graduate Stephanie is a transition from science to prolific comic creator. Her works include Nubia and the Amazons, Nubia, Queen of the Amazon, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Wreck and Roll, and an upcoming adaptation of The Raven Boys. Other titles include Magic, Planeswalkers Noble #1, and Strange and Unsung All-Stars of the DC Multiverse. Her scientific background enhances her storytelling. Stephanie Williams, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, happy to be here.
Take it away, y'all.
Okay, well, I got a few questions for all of you, so I'll probably, do individual, like, hey, this is for you, but otherwise, pretty casual chat, hangout. I don't want this to feel too overly, like, rigid. So if, like, you got a thought that you want to chime in on about something, feel free. I guess we'll start with Preeti. You've written for both Marvel Comics proper, in the sense of your recent like Blood Hunt tie-in, as well as a series of young reader Marvel OGNs through Scholastic. Were there significant differences between the two in terms of like approaching the characters, editorial approval, etc., just as unique challenges with like the same basic characters?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've written the books for Scholastic work sort of like Diary of a Wimpy Kid style. like where they're in mixed media, they're prose and comics, and a bunch of different ways to get kind of reluctant readers engaged, so to speak. So there's a very specific perspective in mind for those titles. They're called Avengers Assembly because we love a pun. Um, and I think with anything where you're writing cross audience, like adults versus like all the way down to kids, and with comics in particular, you have to be mindful of you may not be writing for the audience you think you are because it is about the character. And so it's trying to make sure that you're appealing widely is kind of standard across whatever media you're in, whatever version of the character you're in, but you are very mindful of like, I have a series of prose novels about Spider-Man where he's like 16 and it takes place current era, so like current years. And that was for readers who are like, 8 to 13 years old, which is a very different Spider-Man you're going to get in like a Blood
Yeah.
Hunt comic, right? That
Yeah.
said,
For
that
one, not a
10-year-old,
vampire.
not a vampire, but that 10-year-old might pick up that Blood Hunt comic. And so you have to think about it, right? In that way. An adult might pick up the Spider-Man novel because they're interested in it. But so it's an interesting like challenge in that way of like you never want to step too far back from who the character is, but you have to like have a forefront in your mind of the version of the character you're writing. It's like it's a tightrope that you're walking constantly, I feel like.
Yeah, the way you're describing it, it's almost like there's this core of a character that you want to keep. It's
Hmm.
just what other fine details you're wanting to
Yeah.
add in, depending on the assignment. Um, Next up, we'll go with Steve. Um, Steve, you've had a much longer career in comics than anyone else in this panel. And you've written for just about, well, you've drawn and I believe you've written as
A
well
little bit of
for
everything.
yeah, for just about everybody. How have things changed? What have things changed in regards to working with IP in the last, several years compared to earlier? Have they changed? If so, like, is it easier, harder, more restrictive, etc.?
It's interesting. It's interesting. For me, things have gotten less restrictive. But I'm the artist. I'm working with material that's already been vetted by several rounds of editorial notes. For the writers I work with, they're getting a lot more notes and a lot more poking and adjustment than they used to. One of the great attractions of working in comics was all was for a very long time not being messed with creatively. Um, the devil's bargain was that will pay you atrociously um, and not give you much in the way of intellectual rights, but we won't mess with you in the process of creating it. Um, and a lot of that's gone away. The companies are very aware that the material is being scrutinized in all sorts of ways, useful and not. Um, and they're far more likely to want to tweak uh, to keep things in line with what's happening in other media, in a video game, in a movie, in a TV show, whatever, what have you.
Yeah, I think that's a trend pretty much everyone has seen. I feel like it's a little less common nowadays, but like in the 2010s, you couldn't, throw a rock without hitting something that got changed to fit a multimedia.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fascinating. For Jadzia, you co-created Galaxy with Bash Taylor,
Yes.
who has since your original OGN become a part of the DC universe proper. Um, yeah, excellent plug work. And how does it feel having like an original creation that you made for the intent of that one story join that long running shared universe tapestry? And is it like weird seeing other people write her? Does it feel great? It's like just how's that feel?
It does feel weird. I mean, it's great, and it's also extremely weird. Because when I did write Galaxy, the Prettiest Star, the idea was that in my mind was like they were never going to use this character again. This was in one shot. I had gotten lucky to do it at all, and like my luck was going to run out as soon as the book was done, but that was fine because I did the book and that was all I wanted. I had not anticipated that the character would become so popular and the book would become a hit. Um, so when that happened, I did want to move her into the DC universe proper when I wrote the Hawk Girl series that she appears in.
You're putting us
She's
all to
on.
shame.
I know. Well, I went out of my way to grab props, so I wanted to get them. But yeah, I'm very smooth. But yeah, she's on the back cover there. And that was a lot of fun to bring her from the YA book where she's a teenager into the superhero universe where she's in her 20s, and to have that be a different facet of the same character. And it's weird to see people use her. I have been very fortunate in that the people who have used her have done it with a lot of love and respect. And Nicole Maines did a great job in the Dreamer graphic novel, doing some more teen Galaxy stuff. And then in last year's Pride special, she showed up in a couple stories, which was wild. And to have her have a life outside of me and Vash and a K who designed her amazing superhero outfit. So for her to have a life outside of us is wild. And I'm still not quite, still don't quite comprehend it, I think. But it'll hit me at some point. So far,
I
it's
feel like
been
that's
great.
got to. Yeah, I feel like that's one of those feelings that never fully goes away.
Yeah.
Um, Stephanie, your run with Vita Ayala on Nubia and the Amazon brought a whole new dimension and much broader cast to one of DC's longest running and most beloved corners of the universe in Themyscira, Wonder Woman, that whole section of the DCU. How was that process? Like, did you get a ton of direction? Were you able to be a little more freeform with it? Just how was it adding to so much history to a section of the universe that is so widely loved?
It was interesting because like it's been in existence for since Gotham, since Metropolis, right? But the Wonder Woman side of things, because Diana is often a man's world, especially once we get to George Perez's run. It's like, what do you do with this? Like, this character has existed for 40 years, 50 years, Nubia had, but like, we didn't really have much. So it was kind of like already having the sandbox pre-made, but you had to bring your own sand or add more sand to it, which is very interesting. So thankfully, like we had way more leeway than I would have ever expected. And now that I've been doing this for 4 years now, I definitely know that that was way more leeway than I could have anticipated. But I'm thankful that they allowed us to bring the character to 2021 at the time, and bring her to the present. And it there weren't too many restrictions. In fact, the one note that we got that I was nervous about was changing her origin story because for the people who did know Nubia, a lot of them were fans of that original origin where Diana is Nubia's sister. They are made from, the same clay, one a little darker than the other, and Nubia is then, captured by Mars and then comes back, and that's just what it is, someone to challenge Diana. So going back and like wanting to still keep pieces of that character because I think in the first three times that she appears, like there's something solid there. Like you have this woman who is very sure of herself and like who shows up on the mascara and was like, hey, I'm here. Like it's a very Rick James with the boots on the couch situation where it's just like I'm here to do whatever it is I want to do. I really adored that about her. So for us to be able to build more around that core was really cool. And I don't think we would have been able to do it the way that we did if had we not been given the space to do so.
Yeah, I personally feel like that era of Wonder Woman was so focused on creating new concepts and ideas and to a degree that you very rarely see with like such an established character. And I'm glad to see that that's the kind of like focus that was coming out of it.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Steve, you kind of carved out a niche in the last. Well, I mean, for specifically this niche in the last like decade or so, as one of the best comedy artists in the game. If you want a comedy superhero book, with the more exaggerated like swings that come out of comedic titles, like in terms of personality, as well as just kind of interpretations of characters that maybe don't fit one to one to like if you see Batman in Jimmy Olsen and Batman in Batman, maybe a little different.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that gives you a little more freedom as a creative being in that genre, or is it just a different process?
Absolutely. Well, for the first decade of my career, my work was where comedy went to die. There was just no interest amongst anybody I was working with in making a reader smile at any point. Um, I'm being too harsh there. Uh, but once I started to get to work on comedic books, uh, I was able to shift the way that we told a story. Instead of treating the comics like we were journalists reporting on actual events that had happened. Uh, every comic was much more like an account being told to you around a campfire, um, and the storyteller may not be objective on the events uh, that they're describing, uh, but instead you're getting an individual point of view. And frankly, that's one of comics' greatest strengths is it's an incredibly subjective way of telling a story.
Mhm.
Um, and when we abandon that, we're throwing away a huge valuable toolbox. The art, the choices that the writers make, every bit of it should create a whole other character that isn't part of the story, the storyteller. And that 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 hidden character's point of view should be bouncing off of the actual events of the story and creating one more way to interpret what you're reading.
I love that's such a fascinating answer. I love the campfire storytelling, like little personal biases or going in. I do regret to inform you that no one paid attention to any of it because your cat made an appearance during your answer. Um,
Where is it? Yes,
jumped behind you.
that's good. This is
Um,
good.
I've got one for Jadzia and Stephanie.
Oh,
Both of you have a bit of a catalog of more like reference focused IP titles, like the Unsung All Stars of the DCU and DC's Book of Pride. Were there any surprises when putting together those books, and how different was the process compared to like putting together an original comic narrative in that universe? Because both of you have written for DC and then done DC reference books, so kind of the overlap between the two.
Yeah. Oh, one, I think discovering some of the characters that I did, I said, wow, like editorial is letting folks do whatever. And I am very jealous of that because, like, one of the characters, Doll Welder, when I came across, I was like, oh, there's no way this character is like the name, and he was. Same thing with Beard Hunter. Surprisingly, though, Arm Fall Off Boy did not have as much lore as I thought he would. So, this is a
Tragic.
plug to any DC editor who is listening to this right now. Let me write some Arm Fall Off Boy. But like it was,
Absolute arm fall off boy. Let's go.
I would read
but
your arm fall off boy in a heartbeat.
thank you. No, like it was really fun because for me, like it just felt like a better way to get immersed in the world. I became obsessed with these characters, and I felt like it helped later for other titles that I wrote, the actual stories, because I had some of this extra DC lore in the back of my mind, characters that either I knew existed but I didn't know too much about, and it just kind of helped inform and get me more in tune with just the DC universe and what it was and what it could be and what it was presently. So love working on that book. I mean, my uncle, like let's bring all these people back.
I love Ma.
You said the magic words, Jadzia.
Ma Uncle is one of the greatest fictional creations in the history of the English language, right on up there with
Right.
Falstaff. And I will fight anyone who disagrees with that.
Uh,
Yeah, and I had a similar experience with the DC Book of Pride.
my
Um,
God.
which is like your book, but with queer characters. I had known a lot of these characters already. That's why I was asked to do the book, because I already had researched these independently, because that's a passion of mine. But it was really nice to like dig in and see these characters, um, and who they were. I don't know if there was a bunch of surprises character-wise, but I did find new things to love about characters I already knew about. Like, I didn't think much of the Golden Age Green Lantern. Like, Alan Scott is fine. He's very stiff. Like, that's his characterization for the longest time, was that he was very stiff and proper and like authoritative. And then what happened with the research is looking at that very stiff behavior through the lens of someone who had been in the closet for most of their life makes that character now very poignant and in a whole new way. And I don't think that was on the mind of any of the 40s and creators or anybody who wrote him when they brought him back until very recently. But now, having done that, having that lens to view him in, makes him such a more compelling and interesting character. And it was great to throw in some of the weirdos from queer comics history that I love. Arunya is a character who had one appearance, but they're amazing in that one appearance. It's a Batgirl annual, and they're like a stunt woman Bollywood star, but also genderqueer with shape-changing powers. It's like I'm really surprised that more people don't use Arunya for just shits and giggles, because like it's a great gold mine of a character, honestly.
I really I'm glad that you shouted out the modern Alan Scott story. I think that's some of the most fascinating, like revamping in a long established character for a modern era work that's been done in a hot second. And I would love to pick Tim Sheridan's brain on that one, because wild that like that, what an incredible journey that has gone through. Um, 1 second, my notes app closed, and that's where I
Oh
keep my
no.
questions. Um,
It was the cat
Preeti.
that did it.
It's the cat that did
Oh
it.
God, is that now? I want to make sure I get that cat's name right. That's Spinch.
Finch.
All right, hi Spinch. You're not there, but you're here in spirit.
Yeah.
Um, now, you've, I would say, like, the bulk of your IP work has been for younger audiences. Um, does that, like, I know you kind of touched on it on your previous answer, but when approaching that, you mentioned like narrowing in on specific aspects of characters. But there are also characters that you've been written that are very much not for children. At least I say that Wolverine is the most popular X-Man of
I was
like
like,
in the world.
who?
Yeah, it's Wolverine, but also kids love Wolverine, the man with knives for hands.
Yeah.
Um, but truly, like, what do you think that there's any facet of these universes that, like, we have a John Constantine, we have multiple John Constantine YA like graphic novels. Like, do you think there's any aspect of IP or, like, shared universes that can't be like rearranged to fit a younger audience? Or do you think like anything, like if you give enough time and work, like you can make that work?
I think that the through line for a lot of like Cape comics in general is coming of age. And that is a theme that you can apply to any children's book. And so I don't know that, like, we have Kid Apocalypse in one of my Avengers Assembly books, which I will say, when we were talking about who we wanted to include, Kid Apocalypse came up, and I was like, really? Like, are we sure? And I think that because characters, they have their core, obviously, but they are so malleable. Like, Spider-Man is, I keep bringing up Spider-Man because I love him, but
It's
Spider-Man
Spider-Man.
is gonna be, it's like how you're like, you're not gonna gel with every writer writing at like your favorite character. You might have different things you love about the character that, the writer is like, that's not the thing I want to focus on. And so these characters are so malleable that I do think that there's a way to bring them to the kids' levels because they're comics. Like comics are also for kids, and I think a lot of the time people forget that, or they think it's like the dirty history of comic books that children like them because they don't want to associate their favorite kind of book with what kids are reading, but that's where comics love starts. And so why not bring it back down there, and why not acknowledge that they're just as important of an audience as anyone else? When otherwise, where does the love for the medium start? Like you want to get them hooked when they're young. You want to get them to like have access to these characters so that when they get older, they're like, oh, now I'm ready to read some of these more mature versions and some of these more, the things that maybe I didn't identify with. Like my favorite Spidey is like mid-20s, doesn't have his shit together, Peter Parker, like just
Same.
a complete disaster. And the version of that I pulled into the series was I was like, oh, I want that Spidey who's like he wants to be good, but he's like not good at it yet. And that's the version of that for like kids of like he wants so badly to be good, but he just doesn't know enough to make the right calls. It's not necessarily that he knows the right call and doesn't make it, which often happens in that version. But it's like he tries so hard and he keeps trying, and that is a through line kids can engage with.
Sorry to put you in the hot seat, but your answer unlocked another question in my
Okay.
mind. How was it? You talked about these versions that are for different audiences while still appealing. How was it producing one of the most wild divergences from the norm that I see in the recent House of Harkness series, where you turned a bunch of the dark mystic corner of the Marvel universe into a high school romance, like a boarding school romance. How was that experience?
It was so fun. I was like, yes, Nightmare is gonna be just a prank, enjoying like on a lark in House of Harkness. And they're like that guy. And I was like, yes. He and Loki are gonna wreak like fun havoc through the halls of this high school. But that's a perfect example of like I know that some people were like, oh, that's not my Agatha. Like how are Agatha and Wanda the same age in this book? And I'm like, this is such a classic trope of like fiction of take in comics even take your characters and put them into all of a sudden they're like age serum or something and they're in high school again, like everybody is in high school. One of my favorite I can't what is the name of the Spider-Man cartoon where Spidey and Wolverine swap bodies and it's like
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Ultimate
Yeah.
Spider-Man. It's one of my favorite things, and that cartoon is so clear, speaking of Wolverine for kids, like still gruff, still a disaster, still very like Wolverine, very Logan. But like it's so funny to put Logan in Peter Parker's body in high school is like so good.
Yeah, and that's what I hate to pull this. I'm gonna ask Steve one last question before we go to viewer questions. But that's actually pulling directly from an issue of Ultimate Spider-Man. That's like one of the one-to-one adaptations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens in comics too. Steve, I got one question for you, and then we'll jump to viewer questions if anyone's got any. Otherwise, we can just hang out. But you have the last two of your like biggest DC titles have been Jimmy Olsen, and now currently Metamorpho with Al Ewing. Both of them have this very like Silver Age energy running through them, especially Metamorpho. Is there like do you find it hard to tap into the like an older version without pulling the more troubling parts of past like creations for that same universe, or is it like a fun challenge to modernize while preserving that very dated kind of spirit to it?
I think the dated aspect, well, it's definitely aided by the fact that I am old as shit. Um, but and I went to the Joe Kubert School, which was a fantastic comics education, but we learned a series of techniques and approaches that was absolutely state of the art for 1958. Um, so Silver Age storytelling is my first language. And I'm putting the jokes aside, I'm 100% focused on clarity, and all the values associated with that, with just making sure that the reader can grasp everything. So, and that does half the work right there. Um, Throwing out the crappier problematic aspects of older work is no problem at all. I think we all, every comics reader learns to do that in the course of consuming this stuff. So if you want to love this stuff, you have to eat around the spoiled part of the apple. Um, uh, and and so I could just sit down and create a love letter to everything that actually meant something about the work, and hope I won't say create a better version of it, but help create a version that celebrates all the stuff I loved, and eliminates the stuff that shouldn't have been there in the first place.
And I know I said we would cut to your questions. We have plenty of time. I went through my notes app and saw one that I missed. This is for Jadzia and Stephanie again, because this is an overlap in work that you have done. And it's something I can personally relate to, but I'd rather hear your thoughts. When creating characters, I'm just because of who I am, I'm going to say specifically like trans characters. In a shared universe where, today's a fraught time when creating queer media in general, but especially trans people are under a particular microscope currently. Um, when doing that and like telling a deeply personal story, or telling a story that you want to resonate with other people, um, do you like, how do you approach that while understanding that IP is always going to be corporate? It is a corporate entity, and thus, like, there are unique challenges that come with that. Do you find that to be a challenge that you enjoy tackling? Is it kind of just part of the process for you? How has that gone for you?
Um, just kind of like part of the process. Very much do now and then ask for forgiveness later. You'd be surprised what you can kind of not even necessarily like slip through like you're trying to be sneaky, but just get through and no one knows until it's like after it's done and it's printed and it's like, well, I guess you should have read. But no, my editors read my work, but I don't know, like it just feels it just feels very this is what the story calls for. This is what is on my heart to do. So that in itself, I feel like just I don't know, like it just has to happen, right? Like it just has to be okay. Uh the main purpose of having Bia exist the way that she does on Themyscira is because I am such a comic book nerd and have been around other comic book nerds. I know how important or how much importance is put on canon. So since we were already reintroducing Nubia through the Well of Souls, I said, well, we might as well just get some more folks in here too, be it included that way, instead of Bia being this trans woman who possibly washed up on shore at the mascara and then is dubbed a Amazon, to have her come through the Well of Souls is such a divine view on it, right? Who's arguing that? To me, that was very important so that in the very near future, that another writer can come in and be like, well, he exists. So what do you mean I can't do XYZ? Like you've done it. It's canonically there. So for me, it was just very important. In anything I work on is to make it so that whoever comes after me does not have to fight so hard to convince someone to say okay.
I think that's a
Yeah,
beautiful way to approach it.
absolutely. I look at a lot of writing corporate comics as a dare. So a lot of what I do is pushing things so people will tell me no. So far, it's worked really well. So a lot of the stuff, especially in Hot Girl, which was really an experiment to see what I could get away with, and all of it apparently. So good on me. Um, but also when writing this stuff, it's like there has to be some things that you like draw a line in the sand. And like if someone comes at me and says you can't do this, then I'm going to push back. Everything else, whatever. Who cares about what order the scenes are in as long as the scenes are there, that kind of stuff. And that has allowed me to work really well with editors because I have my focus, which is um depends on the story, but with Galaxy it was very much the queer stuff and the trans stuff, which did not get a whole lot of pushback. And so there was a lot of edits that had to be done, certainly, but like not on that. The one exception, and I do want to bring this up, is this sequence here in the book. Now this is right after Galaxy gets all dolled up by her girlfriend for the first time, and then has a massive panic attack and can't handle it, and says that she doesn't deserve it, and that this is not something that she can have. And my editor was like, this is a really nice moment, but it ruins the pacing. We should cut this and have it go right to the next scene where they're at a party. And I was like, you are absolutely right that about the pacing. It does bring the narrative to a straight halt, but I really would like to. I read a whole like 2-page essay about why this was important, why this kind of thing is not included in a lot of trans stories, and it should be, and this is important, and all this stuff. And to Sarah's credit, she was like, okay, we can keep that in. And we kept it in, and it remains like that 2-page sequence is something I see over and over again, readers being like, this was very powerful in my experience and not something that I have ever seen in a narrative. So like you got to stick to your guns with these important things. And like that has allowed me to like let the other stuff go, which is not as important and not as I'm looking for another word for important, but I guess important will work. But not as
Vital.
important. Yeah, as
Uh,
as this the emotional stuff and the powerful stuff that really affects people. So, yeah, like see how much you can get away with, and if they don't want you to get away with something, push back is my advice.
as a trans gal who, when I was first in my early days, had more than one panic attack after putting on some makeup and went, "Oh God, no!" Thank you for fighting that fight. That is a very important moment. And just as a personal anecdote, when I wrote the Godzilla Valentine's Day special, I was like, I want to take a swing. I want to make it queer. I want to make, at least one of the leads not cis. And I fully expected to get turned down. And Toe was just like, yeah, make it queer. It's fine. So it's like, take the swings. Like, worst thing they can do is go, no. Um,
I
and
was
then,
asked
yeah,
at one point, to the flip side of this, I was asked at one point to do a YA adaptation of G.I. Joe, um, bringing back to Preeti's idea of like anything can be YA if you think about it hard enough. And I did. Um, and I was told that I took it too far from the source, and they did not want the teen gay um, rebellious GI Joe that I had in mind, which is fine. If I don't know if that project is still happening, and I'm sure it's happening with another writer who's better suited for it, but one of the consequences of like saying, "Yeah, I'm going to make this gay," is sometimes they say, "No, thank you," and
yeah,
that's real.
yeah. Hey, I would have read that book. But
it would have been a great book if they had let me do it, but it wouldn't have been the G.I. Joe book I think a lot of people who are G.I. Joe fans would have wanted.
yeah. Um, uh, I think you've all been so wonderful answering the questions I panically wrote on my phone 2 hours ago. Um,
We've been
for
planning this for
now,
months, so
I was like,
oh no, 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 no. They have been planning this for months. I have been planning this for about 2 hours. Um, um, but I've got our first question from Jesse. Question for all the panelists. When you first get trusted with the kinds of IP y'all work with, how the y'all's in there, but I'm from Oklahoma, so I'm allowed to. How much of what you feel is elation versus terror?
oh,
wait, say that question again. I was distracted by your
Okay.
all defense.
So, I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Question for all the panelists. When you first get trusted with the kinds of IP y'all work with, how much of what you feel is elation versus terror?
No terror.
I have
Yeah.
terror
Well,
all the time.
Terror used to haunt me for the first 2 years, but then when I felt like I hit my like junior year, as I've been like naming these things, the terror left because then it became, no, I will become a terror because you say anything to me crazy. I'm gonna make sure that your character has a really bad time. I'm kidding, but not really. But no, the terror left. Like this is when I fully accepted that this was a job, even though I really loved it, the terror just left because I was paid to do I was hired to do this, so it's all good.
I feel like the
Yeah.
terror sometimes comes from, I know the very first time I was asked to write like an IP project was a tie-in for like Spider-Man Far From Home. And I'd never done anything like this. Like I worked in books and I'd written other things. And my initial reaction was like, can I do this? And my best friend was like, yes, obviously, just say yes and then figure it out. But the terror sometimes comes from that like in between moment of like getting from the like can I to I can is hard and can be really scary to sort of make that leap. But then it's always like the minute it becomes I can, you're like, I'm in it. Like this is just it.
I I've never felt terror about IP. This sounds wildly egotistical, but I genuinely believe that I personally have more to offer than any piece of intellectual property. Um, where I have felt genuine soul blistering terror is with in working with certain collaborators, knowing that I'm going to be inking Jose Luis Garcia Lopez for 100 pages, and this is one of the best draftsmen of our century, and I'm going to be translating his lines into ink and hoping that I don't screw it up, or working with a writer who I have tremendous respect for, and hoping that I won't weigh down or at least fail to elevate uh, the script I'm given. But IP, no, yeah, IP is a puppet, and it's our job as puppeteers to bring it to life.
Come on, Pastor
Okay.
Steve.
Okay. Well, anyone else got any tag-ins on that,
It
or
looks
should
it
we
looks
move
like
on to
there
our
are
next question?
two, yeah, those two
Oh no,
raised
yeah, yeah.
hands. Oh,
Okay,
I was
yeah.
like, Zoom is so
Well, one more
weird.
thing. This is just the
Oh yeah.
job that I wanted since I was like 6. So like I'm not gonna be frightened of it now that I have it.
I,
Amen.
I do think that sometimes the fear, I mean, I say this with like I had a series canceled, and there's an anxiety sometimes when it comes to which you cannot control and should not let control you, but you can't help but feel it sometimes where I'm like, well, now there's a series with a name that sounds like mine on it that people can point to that didn't work. And that is a very real fear that is unfortunate, but will be, you can't let it, like I said, control you, but it does creep up sometimes.
Yeah.
For sure.
I feel like every time I submit a pitch or a draft for like IP, I'm always just like, All right, now I'm gonna have a small anxiety attack in the
Yeah.
background until my editor responds. It's just how it goes. But okay. We've got our next question from Lamont Valentine. Lamont, I'm gonna unmute you. So give me one sec. Oh, you're already unmuted. Hey, we're good.
Uh, Hi, y'all. How y'all doing today? My name is Lamonte, and my question to you
Apologies.
is all good, all good. You can't really see the thing on the E because I never get that option, so it's all good. But my question to you all is when you're working on, especially on a pre-established IP, and you're called upon to do either a story or you have a pitch or whatnot, where do you draw the line between respecting what came before you and wanting your story to be as authentic to you as possible?
That's a good one.
Well, with
Um,
me, it all comes from the love. Like
Mhm.
I find the part of the character that I love, that I fell in love with, that made me excited to want to write them. And then when I look back on the canon to pull story ideas and them, it's stuff that reflects that love. And the stuff that doesn't reflect the love, then we can just put that away and then we don't have to talk about it. But we can focus on the stuff that brought the love. I think with Hawk Girl, whose background is so all over the place, it was
Interesting.
really easy to be like, well, these stories I love. These stories are what made the character real for me. So these are the stories that I'm going to build upon. And these stories over here, I will have them over here. And and
Yeah.
that's how I did it. And I think it came out well.
Did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. I appreciate y'all so very much. I'm gonna go on mute now.
Um, I guess I can give my own answers to these a little bit now. The way I always approach it is with like a degree of professionalism, because you don't want to write a story that's all about like, and this other story I don't like is poo-poo trash. So you like, you can change things, but always if if not treating the story with respect, treat the people who made it with respect. You don't want to just trash someone else's work. Um, and next up is someone named Cody. Give me one moment.
Who?
Hi, I'm Cody. Who could I be? But I did have a question about like Jadzia creating a character. So when you create a character for Marvel or DC, how does that copyright work? Do you, as the creator, get any slice of that, or is it solely like now the publisher's property? So if they appear in another story, do you get royalties? Like I think I remember talking with Dustin Nguyen once, um, and he created like some characters in the Batman canon, and he mentioned he might get some royalties from that. But yeah, how does that work?
Sure. I can't speak for Marvel, because I don't have any experience in that. But with DC and specifically with Galaxy, um, DC owns Galaxy and the characters. I do have creator equity, so in some circumstances, I do get money if there is other media made with these characters, or if they show up in another story that someone else writes that has Galaxy in the title, then Vash and I would get a percentage of the royalties after a certain number of copies are sold or anything like that. So, for example, Galaxy shows up in Hawk Girl, but Vosh did not get royalties from that because it's a Hawk Girl book, um, which is silly, but that is how the contract works. So yeah, so there is, if there is other media, I would have some money if, and if other people do it with the title, I get some money, but otherwise, DC owns Galaxy. And I knew that going in. I knew that I was creating something that was not going to be owned by me. Um, but it was worth it for adding this character and having this opportunity.
I
Galaxy
also,
and Fortnite
Cody,
would
your
be amazing.
Galaxy and Fortnite when
I'd love to
do
see that.
Galaxy Dreamer duos. It'll be great.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Do we have any other for folks who can't see the chat, Steve just said DC is much better at this than Marvel. Famously, writer Len, I've never said it out loud. Is it Ween? Thank you.
Ween.
Ween made much more money from creating Lucius Fox at DC than he did for creating Wolverine at Marvel. Okay. Cody, I believe you were before Lamonte, and then Nola just threw up a hand in the chat. So we'll do Cody, Lamonte, and Nola.
Yeah, sorry you have to listen to me again, but I know you all entered the industry at different times, and some of you are more writers focused, some of you are more art focused, and I was just wondering if you have any general advice for people who are currently working in the direct market now. Like a friend of mine, Fellhound, had a book out with Boom, and she just wanted to know like what are some like next steps on if you want to start working at these publishers on established IP rather than your own.
Keep the momentum going. Like I've
Mhm.
learned that networking is key. Yeah, that's so important. So keeping the momentum going. So if you've had a book that just came out, then that probably is the best time to hit up editors that you do know, even editors that you don't. I finally got a LinkedIn like last year, and I think like 3 jobs came from that simply because editors were able to find me on there versus online. So keep the momentum going. If you're at conventions, if you happen to be tabling or there's a convention that is near you, I would go. Sometimes editors are there walking around or they're doing portfolios for artists, but it wouldn't be wrong if you're a writer and you went up there and you said, "Hey, that's good." You can look at that. So it's a little bit easier to cold pitch when you have, some established work versus you don't have anything but like just the ideas. Because I get that all the time when I'm at conventions where folks will tell me their ideas, and I'm like, "This is great, but also I need to like we actually need to see something."
Like have an easy way to be contacted. I know that's like very basic, but a lot of people don't have like a very easy way to be contacted.
Yeah, as the guy who used to run the mentorship program at Helioscope, uh, I've I've suffered for years watching cartoonists who do everything they can to make themselves invisible online and impossible to reach. Um, put your name on everything that's out there. Use the same name across social media or as close as you can as possible. Um, use your actual professional name. Don't use a clever jokey thing. And I say that as someone who on Blue Sky right now is Le Poisson Steve Lieber. Um, uh, y y do not put any obstacles in the path of someone who might want to hire you. It's really basic. The actual specific techniques for getting work are changing constantly all the time, but there's three general principles that do not change at all, which is one, do good work, two, do a lot of it, be prolific, and three, put it in front of as many eyeballs as you possibly can. Where those eyeballs are, that's going to change. Uh, Being well over the age of 50, I am unable to tell a young person where to find young eyeballs. Those things are as invisible to me as that mosquito frequency that people used to use for their ringtones so that adults couldn't hear them. Um, but it's uh, you know where the people who like the kind of stuff that you make hang out. Put your stuff there, make it visible, get it in front of people. If if you believe in your work, what's the biblical line? Don't hide your light under a bushel. Get it out there in front of people.
Cold emailing works too, which is like really
Yeah.
hard to do. I struggle with it. I do it anyway. And it takes like 5 minutes to do when you actually do it, and sometimes it works and sometimes they'll ignore you. But just recently, Stephanie suggested that I cold email an editor, and that turned into work. So,
Hey,
yeah. So
yeah.
by all means, do that. And
I,
the odds. There's a lot of signal to noise with that. Like I sent out a lot of emails and got some zero responses to some people, but also like you get some responses. So go with it, especially if you have a
I've
book that you can link to.
yeah, I've been doing a shoot your shot 2025 cold emailing left and right, and yeah, I got 3 stories on the way, and I've got some more that might happen. So yeah, it's worth it. Cold emailing is good.
I
Just
And if
I
you're
be
lucky, you will email someone who says, I'm not here right now, but if you need to contact, here's a
Yeah.
list of other editors you can contact. That's the best case scenario.
I do
in
also want
in
to say no,
yeah.
no, Steve, go.
I launched my career as an artist in the early '90s by mailing physical mail packages of samples on the first day of every month to every single editor, assistant editor, and art director in the business. I was spending a lot on postage and photocopies, but by doing it on the same day every day for a year, they started to see that I was making deadlines before I had any deadlines. Um, and it made it less of a risk to hire me because I had established myself as someone who wouldn't flake. Um, Nowadays, you don't have to. You can establish that track record by having a web comic or yeah, updating your newsletter on a regular basis, just showing that you're someone who shows up and does the work.
I said it after you revealed the origin of Shocker's couch on Blue Sky, but you have the biggest brain in comics, Steve. Um,
Mostly water.
let's aren't they all? We're gonna go to Lamonte next. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi, sorry again. I did have one more question. This is more specifically for Stephanie. Hey, Auntie. I met you at Baltimore Comic Con last year, and you have been such a profound effect on my life pretty much ever since. You were already my fave. Sorry, guys. But um,
Justified.
Very much justified, but I have begun working on my own script so I can start cold emailing and having my own, personal anxiety attacks. But one thing I wanted to ask is when you are kind of coming up with these stories to pitch and whatnot, and you're developing your elevator pitch, are you going for more of a 15-second pitch? Or are you going for more of a 30-second to 45 seconds elevator pitch when you're doing these cold emails? Because there is a dramatic difference between the two.
Yes. So I started workshopping this like while either at conventions, so we doing a lot there where when someone comes to my table or whatever, I have like certain levels. So there's that 15-second real quick. Are you gonna stay around or are you gonna walk away? If you stay past that 15 minutes, then I go a little bit more and I just kind of build on it. Same thing with when I'm like emailing an editor, even if I'm cold pitching, I'll usually try to do the 15-second, or in this case, a sentence or two where I know that I'm going to get the editor's attention. So, for instance, the thing that I'm doing with the Nation Press, the sell there was, hey, imagine if Madam C.J. Walker was a chemist more so than an entrepreneur, and this is a cosmic war, right? Immediate yes. And then I got to say, psych, this actually isn't about Madam C.J. Walker. It's a totally different character. That kind of is inspired by her. And then it's still cosmic horror and it's still set in 1905. And then by then they were already hooked and they were willing to hear me out on everything else. So start with the meaty stuff first, flashy words, whatever. And then from there kind of build. But it's a case by case basis. It's something that you only get a better feel for the more that you do. Because before I used to waste my time like writing a whole soliloquy to an editor, and like they just don't have time to read all that. So the quicker you can be, the better.
Thank you, because I'm a novelist by trade, and that is a very different kind of pitch versus
Oh
comics.
yeah,
But thank you so
you
much.
got this though.
Appreciate it.
Stephanie, you practice the
Um,
pitches out loud? Like,
I
do
do
you sit at home
sometimes.
and
Sometimes with my son, like I'll say, "Hey," because he'll tell me the truth no matter what. So I'll like, I'll practice it with him and kind
ruthless.
of workshop it, and it works. But like conventions are to me a really great time to kind of workshop some things. I'll even like lightly workshop ideas that I have, and with some random person be interested in this that I'm meeting, in place. Like, sure, they're at this convention, but I feel like it's a little harder to be it's easier to be more authentic in person and live, and there isn't much of a filter there. So to me, I feel like I'm getting more raw data that way. But yeah, like I'm all for trying to figure things out while I'm at these places because I'm stuck there for 8 hours, so might as well.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question. And Nola raised her hand. So Nola, if you want to unmute,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay. So going back to you were talking about the Len Wein thing earlier and how he got more from DC than he did for Wolverine and Marvel. Um, from the flip side of that, what's a good way to protect yourself in these sorts of things? Because the obvious other big example of that is the Alan Moore Watchmen deal, where the rights were supposed to go back to him when it went out of publication, and then DC just never stopped publishing it. So like, what's a good way to protect yourself also?
oh.
It's hard because I feel like we are unfortunately in a space if you're writing for a big corporate IP, you're going in kind of with the assumption that you're not getting the rights and you're not getting the royalty, and anything else is gravy. It's just knowing that going in because they have so much power,
Yeah.
which is not a great answer, unfortunately.
No.
It's not a hopeful
almost have to make
answer.
Yeah.
you almost
The
have
best
to make
protection
peace with
prob
yourself.
Huh?
Oh, sorry.
No, you say it.
Oh, no, I was gonna say you almost have to make peace with yourself, right?
Mhm.
Because of course, like you don't want to turn in just whatever, because your name is you and your
Yeah.
collaborators, your names are on this, but you almost have to make peace if I don't know, if I create this character and it becomes something that's like $1 billion movie, will I be able to sleep at night knowing I'm not getting those billions? Probably not.
Yeah.
But but that's something you can't control. I guess you could look at it with the glass half full and say, well, if people know that I created this character, hopefully they'll check out the creator owned stuff that I've done and actually do
Yeah.
get
Hmm.
full benefits from, and just kind of go from there. It's a give and take, more
Yes.
take, but it's a give and
Um.
take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Oh no,
The
no, no, no.
best
Speak.
advice really is to do creator-owned stuff in addition to the IP stuff.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Yep.
to have stuff
Always.
that you do own and that you do get the results from.
Hmm.
And like the IP stuff is fun and it, you know, fulfills a childlike glee to be able to play with those toys. But I think you have to, like you said, just be aware that that's what you're doing and then not count on that being anything other than what it is.
Yeah, it's always been a devil's bargain, and now there are so many options for getting your work out there aside from working on corporate-owned IP. That said, get yourself an entertainment lawyer. Don't sign anything without having a lawyer read it and explain it to you. Um, it, I've known far too many people with years of experience who still sign contracts blindly without looking to see what's in there, and it's madness. And you know, when you enter into an agreement, you're not just entering into it with the editor who you send memes to online and have a great time joking around with. You're entering into that agreement with the evil tech bros who are going to buy that company 2 years from now, um, and who would cheerfully feed you into a wood chipper, for an extra 50 cents. Um, the 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 thing to take away from working on corporate IP, aside from the sheer joy of playing with childhood toys, or uh, getting the bonus of getting to work with other really serious professionals, is that if you play things right, it can provide a really good platform to launch your own career and your own work. Um, it, it it's not good, but conventions are far more likely to take you seriously and give you a table or admit you if in the parentheses next to your name there's some corporate IP that they've heard of. I'm way more likely to get seated at a table as Steve Detective Comics Lieber or Steve Jimmy Olsen Lieber than I am as Steve Backflash Lieber or Steve Whiteout Lieber. Um, uh, if you're going to do the corporate work, take advantage of that so that you can better establish yourself as a creator of things yourself.
Cody has a question in the chat about
Yeah,
negotiation for the
yeah.
contracts. And
I'll read it out loud just so we like everyone. Is there much wiggle room when you're signing contracts with them, or is it sort of like they give you the contract and that's it, you sign it or you don't?
With DC and
Depends.
Marvel, I've never found them willing to do much in the way of negotiations. Other people I know have managed to do that, but those are people with a lot more leverage than I'll ever have in my career. Um, uh, but at the very least, be aware of what you're signing. Um, if you find that if you create a character, they're going to own it, and you're going to have no equity in that character, maybe see if there's already a character that exists that can fill that space in your story and save that great idea for yourself rather than giving it to Blorfco.
there
Yeah.
is it depends on the publisher though, because on the comics, like straight up comic side, likely no. On the publisher traditional book side, my agent negotiates for me, like 100%.
Yeah.
Negotiated on Scholastic and with Disney Marvel Press for the prose titles. So
That
it does depend.
that's something that I think a lot of people may not know is that typically when it comes to your Marvels, your DCs, your Power Rangers, like stuff like that. Typically, if you have a literary agent, they don't want to work with agents. It's usually a direct interface. Whereas if you're going through a traditional book publisher, agents all the way.
Mhm.
I've gone through this with my agent many times. So yeah.
Yeah, my agent does not talk to Marvel and DC Comics.
Yep, same.
Just forward the
They
email directly to you.
I
Like,
know.
this is
They're
yours.
just like, this is yours.
yeah, my agent's like, look, you can do it if you want. I don't want.
He's like, I don't
The
need
word
15% of $400.
exactly. Yeah, my agent who I love you, Desiree. They were like, I feel bad. Like I feel bad taking a cut of what you get. So
Same.
no, thank you.
We're not
Um,
making this sound good at all,
I know,
but no,
but it is.
it's great. It's lovely. You don't make a ton of money. You do it for the love of the game.
And for the platform. I will like
And for the platform,
like
and
to
for
Steve's
building your
point.
career.
Yeah.
But it is worth
uh,
being literate about your contracts and about
Yes.
what they
100%.
mean and what they
Mm-hmm.
can be. Like, you don't get a lot of wiggle room with big two stuff, but with the smaller publishers, you do. And it's worth like pushing your rights in those cases.
Yeah.
yeah, because
Um,
I'm sorry, real quick, for like Mad Cave and even at Mission Press, I was able to do way more negotiating. In fact,
Yeah, 100%.
when I got an email back, I said, did you read that phrase? Like, I didn't write that number, but yeah, I'll take that. So you can bargain.
Yeah, I'll give a quick
Yeah.
I'll give a quick
Oh,
example
no.
of
Yeah.
I was offered a chance to work on a traditional book publisher's new graphic novel series. They were publishing a thing of international mythology, and they wanted me to do the Norse mythology one. And there was a thing buried deep in the contract that said that I was not allowed to work on any competing projects featuring the same characters. And I explained to them that you're asking me to sign a document for this one graphic novel that promises I will never work on a character named Thor, or Odin or Loki or any of those things. And I explained to them that there's this company called Marvel Comics that also has characters with this name. And their legal department said, "Oh, we understand that. Don't worry, we won't act on it."
Mm-mm.
And I said,
No.
"Well, that's great. What, then take it out of the contract?" And they said, "No, we can't. It's part of the rule." And I wound up not taking the project, even though I needed it, because I did not want to put the next 30 years of my career in the hands of whoever winds up buying out that contract.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a contract with a press for a graphic novel adaptation, so it was definitely not my original work. It was someone else's. And there wasn't any back end stuff on that. And I brought this up to the editor, who was like, "Yeah, I know, but trust me, we'll take care of you when the book comes out and all this stuff." And I was like, I do like this editor and I do trust him, but I did not trust that he would be with this company when the book came out in a year or whatever. Like that's you can't plan for that, and like especially with the businesses the way now. So whenever someone asks you to just trust them, don't, because there's things out of their control and things out of your control. And I did get back end stuff in writing for that. So it's worth it to know your rights and to not let people be, as Steve said, be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine."
Yeah.
Because
And
you might not be.
yeah. And always be aware that no company will ever pay you enough to successfully sue them.
That's the wisest thing I've ever
True.
heard.
Yeah.
We got a question from Cody. Do the panelists think a movement like the co-op can move the needle on things like less than stellar contracts if we continue to band together and push for wage transparency and fight for our rights in contract negotiation?
Yeah.
It's worth a shot. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think comics are a very solidarity hostile industry in lots of ways. But I mean, it's never a bad thing to do that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot of people don't even realize they have resources. Like
Yeah.
from the novel perspective, like authors who publish traditionally with like traditional book publishers are actually not allowed to unionize. We are treated like that. It's illegal for us to try to do something like this, which drives me bananas. So whenever I'm like going looking for resources, it's so often I have to just ask friends. But if there's like a concerted space for people to come and know that they'll get answers and support, that's like half the battle, I think, of like even realizing that this kind of thing exists that you can go to for help. Because the minute, and maybe this is with more smaller publishers, like Marvel DC is like a whole different ballgame, I think, to an
Yeah.
extent. But with smaller publishers or more independent presses, like absolutely there's no reason that like they will blink, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one outlook that more I think everyone here shares this outlook, but a lot of people in comics often view to me like other writers or artists as competition rather than like, people who are working in the same industry as you. And I feel like that is antithetical to solidarity in a lot of ways. So accepting that, someone getting a book you didn't get doesn't make them your competition. It's simply we're all in the same pool. It's not their fault. They are not going, I want to screw over whoever. And just getting rid of that kind of the edge that a lot of people tend to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was another question. 1 second.
I think Nola had a question.
Yeah, Nola, you had one. Where did it go? There we go. Going back to the comics on LinkedIn thing, Are there any tips for how to represent your comics work there? I think that's for Stephanie because I don't do that.
I mean, however you want.
Yeah. How do you do that?
I know. Should we all be on? Do I need to get back on
Stephanie,
LinkedIn?
hey, Stephanie, do you want to do a class real quick?
Absolutely. You know, like LinkedIn is weird. I think we all know that, but I've done everything from, posting a picture of me like picking my comics up at the store, or if there happens to be an article or something associated with it, I'm like, hey, blah 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 was just announced or whatever. Then of course, like listing in your work history all the things that you've worked on. So even though like I haven't done anything with Marvel directly in the last year and a half, I've done a lot of custom comics. So like I'll list those things, right? I never put it's always present. Like might have wrote one thing for Boom, but it just says presently because you never know when you're going to circle back to a publisher. So posting your work in the same way that you do on social media, well, not in the exact same way, just a little bit more professional, I think is super helpful. Also, adding as many editors as you can find on LinkedIn. Like I've randomly added editors who like I just knew of them from reading stuff that they worked on and been surprised where they like slide in my DMs like, hey, a fan of yours. Would you like to talk? Like you just never know. So LinkedIn absolutely like folks are looking for writers and artists on there.
That's so smart. I honestly am
I had no
angry at
idea. I was
myself
like,
for
wow.
not thinking about that.
I know. I deleted my
I
LinkedIn like
know.
7 years ago.
Same. I made it and then it was like, oh, hey, I know what city you're in. I'm just gonna put that here. And I'm like, no, don't do that.
Hey, y'all, I would be
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just real quick, like Archie, I've been wanting to work with them for like the longest, right? The editor, Jamie, like she reached out to me on LinkedIn out of all things. So like,
Wild.
it's just you
There
just
you go.
never
You
ever
never know.
So
Never know.
mad.
Full transparency, I got my the upcoming story that I'm writing in the Marvel Pride special this year, which go pre-order that. Final order cutoff is on Monday. I got a cold email on a Friday night at like 7 p.m. just going like, hey, you want to write that? You want to write with us? You want to do that? It happens in the craziest ways sometimes.
Mhm.
But yeah, do we have any other oh, I think there's one that I saw. From Jesse, they ask, do you feel like there's some hesitancy from IP cartoonists to join the co-op based on fears that they may not like that there's an organizing solidarity movement in comics?
As
And there we go.
as the resident old, I might be best placed to answer this. I think it's the hesitancy is a combination of a few things. Number one, just not having the time. If you're drawing a comic, you're constantly you've got a gun to your head, and and putting out the fire of the current deadline is way more important at the moment than it is to negotiate or to share info or anything like that. Two, there's a lot of hesitancy because I think folks are afraid of of the unprofessionalism of some of the folks they're going to be networking with. They're worried that that they're going to be dealing with the fans that they meet at a convention rather than other professionals who are solving the same problems that they are. Um, and uh, and third, I know uh, that there's always a lot of hesitancy about things about basic stuff like sharing page rates in a place where there's a physical archive, and there's some actual good reasons for that. If somebody could go online and find out what your page rate is, you've just anchored yourself in a negotiation, and you've told someone who's potentially hiring you, well, this is the absolute most I'll have to pay them, and we're going to see if I can negotiate it down from there. Um, yeah, a lot of these conversations that the co-op type conversations that we want to take place are taking place, but they're taking place face to face, not online anywhere. That's a big part of what we try to accomplish at my studio, Helioscope, is getting this information out amongst other creators, but not in a place where the people who are hiring us can get that information. It's kind of like you don't want your union hall to be open to the to the folks from management, and for a thing that's as online as the co-op is, it feels like you're doing all your union hall business just out in the open.
I think it's
Bummer, I
hard
know.
to get. It's a bummer, but it's a realistic, like that's the reality of the situation, and I think it's important to address that reality. I'm also gonna read this out loud in case anyone isn't following along with the chat or anything. This is from Joan. If you're someone who makes comics and wants to rally together with other folks fighting for better wages and working conditions, you should join us at the Cartoonist Cooperative at cartoonist.coop. We also had one final question from Nola, and this is directed specifically to you, Steve. Will you give Finch a kiss and tell them that we love them?
Yes. If
Great.
if she'll have me.
Perfect. That's hey, that's good enough for me. And I don't think you're gonna end on a better note than Finch getting a little kiss on the head. Well, I think that was great. Yeah, if anyone else has a last minute, like, we got 7 more minutes, but I think we're good.
I have a question for Steph and Jadzia specifically about the reference books, because when I was writing my first Spider-Man book, I had a question for Marvel that was, does Sandman have bones? And they sent me back a PDF of an old, like, Marvel reference one sheet on Sandman, and it did not answer my question.
Oh,
And
course
I
they
want to
didn't.
know what was like a weird, or like what was a favorite weird fact that you remember in compiling your reference books?
Mhm.
While you're
Man
thinking,
don't got
I
bones.
decided that Sandman does not have bones because he's
Yeah,
all
that
sand.
just makes sense.
He's all
Yeah,
sand.
he's all sand. Why would he
If
have
he had bones,
bones?
they would be sand. And
So he
thus
doesn't
Sand is the
exactly.
bones, the bones is the sand.
Exactly.
the bones in the sand are their money.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, this is the weird. I get this question a lot, and like I already knew all these weirdos, so it's like none of it was a huge surprise. Like I'm just a colossal nerd. Um,
Then what's just your favorite fact?
my favorite fact. Um,
I need you to know that I've been thinking about this question since Zoe
Right, I
asked.
know I got my answer
Right.
now.
Delightful.
Literally for like an hour, I've been like, I want to ask
Yeah.
this question.
So now I want to look at it and be like, what was my
Okay.
favorite? Yeah,
While you
you go
look that
ahead,
up, I
Steph.
do
I'm
have
gonna
my
research
answer.
this wonderful book. And
I never knew that Superman had went to therapy. This because there's a character that I included, Dr. Patricia, I'm blanking on her last name, but she was a therapist in the DC universe, and Superman went to therapy to her twice. Once because he was traumatized by, I think, either killing Zod or almost killing Zod or something. I don't remember exactly. And the second time when he wasn't sure if he was racist or not. So, yes, Steve. So he went to the
That's good.
therapist because he had gone to Harlem, and Muhammad X is a character that has only existed
Oh
in one
my
comic, and
God.
it is Superman 279. And he goes to Harlem, and Muhammad X is like, "Why are you here? Like, I got this. Like, go back to Metropolis." And then it dawns on Superman that I guess this black neighborhood doesn't need him. So he then goes and he flies to Paris to have lunch or dinner with Lois, which I'm like, that's not privilege. I don't know what it is. And like she's like, no, babe, like you're not racist at all. Like you say whoever. So he then goes and he visits Natasha Irons. And I'm blinking on the other character, but Natasha Irons like, yeah, I love Muhammad X. And the other character, who clearly is a little white girl, is like, I love you, Superman. So there's that. So then he has to go to therapy to talk about this and how traumatized he is by it, only for this comic to end with him and Muhammad X having a conversation where absolutely nothing got solved.
And like
Superman like flies away.
If that's not
like
the most realistic representation
this,
in
I
comics,
thought this was something that was old,
Yeah,
but with
yeah,
Natasha
yes.
Irons in it.
Yeah, if Natasha
This
Irons
must
is
be
in
a
it, that's
recent
no,
book.
this is like late,
I
no,
was
this is like late
alive when
90s.
this came out. That's
Late 90s. Okay,
upsetting.
well that makes a little more sense.
Yeah,
But like,
Wowza.
wow. I was
no,
thinking this was like that time Lois Lane turned black.
this,
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
this
yeah.
all sounds like high art. I don't know what
Wow,
you're all talking
amazing.
about.
Um,
it was great. So that was my fun. That was my fun thing that I discovered. I'm like, why do you go to therapy for that? But
Incredible.
I found my thing, Preeti, which is that Crush was found by hippie burnouts at Burning Man. And that was just such a wild detail about her life that so many of these things aren't specific, right? They're generalized or they're like done in a like, this is our version of Burning Man, which is Flaming Woman or whatever, right? It's like never so specific as to say like, yeah, two hippie burnouts found a baby
Amazing.
Lobo at Burning Man of all places and raised
Little
her.
lady baby Lobo.
Uh-huh.
I love Crush, and I cannot think of a more perfect origin for her.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, great. I think we can call it there. Thank you all so much. This has been a delight to moderate. You're all wonderful panelists, and just this was absolutely wonderful.
I had a great time.
And now I
Yeah.
got
wonderful.
This is awesome.
great. Well, I'll again plug. Well, actually, hold on, everyone. If you want to plug social media or anything right now, now's the perfect time for it.
My
So-
social media is not my name. Steve
Preeti,
was like,
you failed.
don't use a cute thing. And I was like, my handle is Run with Skizzers because it was my AIM screen name.
It's okay. It's okay. Hey, I'll tell you right
Let's
now,
type it in the chat.
until I transitioned, my username was also my AIM screen name.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But
At
yeah,
least
Run
it's
with Skizzers.
consistent.
It's true. I am the same everywhere. Blue Sky, Instagram, Tumblr are the places that I am. And you can buy my books, preetichhibber.com or runwithskizzers.com, which does go to preetichhibber.com.
That's so smart.
I love it.
See, that's a workaround. That's a workaround. It's nice. I'm also don't have my name. It's Planet X .blue sky. And that used to be like when I was a circus performer, I was the man from Planet X. So that has followed me everywhere since then. And I probably won't change it, even though it's bad business. So there you go. But I had that in LiveJournal and now continuing on. I'm only on Blue Sky. I'm not anywhere else anymore. I deleted all those accounts. But you can find me there and at JadziaAxelrod.com. Finally, that would go to my old website with my old name, but now it's just JadziaAxelrod.com. And the old name now directs to JadziaAxelrod.com, which is better. And that's where you find me there. And I'm going to get the LinkedIn together now.
I know, right?
Seems to be the right thing to do. I've been using it for day job stuff, and that was obviously a mistake. Hasn't worked for anything with that. And I need to start using it to get comic work.
I'm so happy I could bring that gospel to you all. You can find me
A revelation.
yes, at Steph_I_Will. Sort of my name, but my middle name does not start with an I. This is like long before I knew, I was a little researcher. I just wanted to be online. So that was the thing there. But it is Stephanie Williams. That's Instagram, TikTok, Threads, no longer on X, but still there. The handle is, and then Blue Sky, which is like Steph Williams or something. Just search Stephanie Williams and you'll find me.
And I'm Steve Lieber, mostly on Blue Sky, perfunctorily on a few other things, but if you want actual human contact, get me on Blue Sky. And I'm so grateful to all of you for this wonderful panel. This has been a delight.
Thank you. And I'm Zoe with a sword on Blue Sky because the brand is strong. And I'm not really anywhere else. I'm on Instagram with Zoe Writes Stuff. But you can message me if you want. I don't really post anything. But yeah, this has been a wonderful panel. You all have been a delight. And I'm so thrilled we could do this. And thank you to the Cartoonist Co-op for organizing this and also for what you do. Like, it's such a wonderful thing to have in the industry. And I think we're gonna call it. I don't know how to end.
Yeah, what are we? Do we hang out?
Weirdly,
Do we just wait?
Just sit here and age.
Should we all go by? Big wave
I'm just
and
gonna
then
drift
get out?
away like I got Thanos snapped.
Well, Steve, would you like to do a Justice League of Antarctica book? I've been trying to push this for 2 years now. I think if I add you to it, then we can make it happen. But
I
all
can't
the
wait till the
editors
Bleeding
know.
School,
Say yes
Bleeding
on
School
camera,
story.
I would, I would
You
be up
saying
for
yes
it,
on
but
camera?
not until the current project is done.
Oh,
I'm
this
working.
is, we're talking 20, 26, 27. It's just, if the sea levels are okay. Then
I
we'll
was
do
like,
it.
that's bold of you to think of
I- yeah,
2027.
Yeah,
It's claiming that
and
they
you may
actually
happen.